Hey guys, it's Miss Deloach, and we are going to go ahead and continue our lesson on the skeletal system. Particularly, we are going to be learning about the vertebral column today. If you have not already, you need to go ahead and head over to Google Classroom. There is a skull bone gym kit right here. You have a homework assignment there. So go ahead and go review all of these skull bones from yesterday, and when you are done, come back here and we will begin our notes. Alright, so by now you should be done with the gym kit. So we're going to go ahead and continue our notes on the vertebral column. If you have a physical copy of notes, go ahead and get those out. If you do not have a physical copy, there is a Google Docs on Google Classroom with these guided notes that you need to go ahead and fill in while we are discussing the near column. So, what is the structure of the vertebral column? The vertebral column extends from the skull to the pelvis. So, on our little model right here, you can see the spine goes from the bottom of his skull all the way down to his pelvis. It provides support and it protects the spinal cord running through it. So, on this model right here, you see this yellow little rubbery piece. That is the spinal cord. So what the spine acts as, or vertebral column, it acts as a cage and it protects the spinal cord all the way down the back. It consists of 33 vertebrae at birth, but the 5 sacral vertebrae and 4 vertebrae of the coccyx fuse in adolescence or your teenage years. The remaining vertebrae are separated by intervertebral discs that provide cushioning and absorb shock. So, looking back at our model, you can see in here, these little dark gray spaces right there, those act as the vertebral disc, and they just provide cushion and absorb shock. So you have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar, 5 fused sacral, and 4 fused coccyx. The spine is convexly curved at birth, but 2 portions develop concave curves later in life. The primary and secondary curvatures of the spine allow for better balance and weight distribution of throughout the body. So your spine is supposed to curve both outwards and inwards. This allows for balance and distribution of weight. Your cervical vertebrae. The 7 cervical vertebrae, C1 through C7, form the neck region of the spine. The first 2 vertebrae, which are the atlas and axis, are different because they perform functions not shared by other cervical vertebrae. So they have 2 different functions than the rest of them. The atlas, which is C1, has no body. And you can see right here, it kind of has a large hole in it, which represents the body. The atlas has transverse processes that receive the occipital condyles of the skull. So if you remember from yesterday with the occipital bone, the back of the skull, it has 2 little condyles, 2 little pieces that connect to this atlas. And this joint allows you to nod your head yes. The axis, which is C2, acts as a pivot for the rotation of the atlas. So pretty much C1 lays right on top of C2, and it has a large process called the dens, which is right here, which acts as the pivot point. So that dens fits perfectly like a puzzle piece right into the atlas. The joint between C1 and C2, and if you remember the definition of a joint, it is where 2 bones meet. It allows you to rotate your head from side to side, which indicates no. The thoracic vertebrae. So you have 12 thoracic vertebrae and they are all typical, meaning they have the same function. They are distinguished by the fact that they are the only vertebrae to articulate with the ribs. So you can see the ribs right here. The thoracic vertebrae are the ones that are touching the ribs. So that's how you can remember the thoracic vertebrae. Your lumbar vertebrae. So you have 5 lumbar vertebrae, and they are really massive compared to your vertebrae in your neck and the rest of your spine. So they are really big, and they have a kidney bean shape. Most of the stress of the vertebrae column occurs in the lumbar region, so that makes them the sturdiest of the vertebrae. The sacrum. So the sacrum is formed by the fusion of 5 vertebrae. It articulates with L5, and it inferiorly connects with the coccyx. So it articulates, it meets with the 5th vertebrae in the lumbar region. And then it connects with that bottom coccyx. The coccyx is formed from the fusion of 3 to 5 tiny vertebrae. So it is the last piece of the vertebral column. It is the human tailbone. Alright, so now we are going to go ahead and move on to abnormal spinal curvatures. So in middle school, we are given a spinal check to check for any abnormal curvatures. Most of these abnormal curvatures that you get checked for in middle school are scoliosis. So these abnormalities may be present at birth, or they can result from a skeletal system disease, poor posture, or unequal muscle pull on the spine. So the first one is scoliosis. So scoliosis is the sideways curvature of the spine. So you can see in this picture right here, his spine is curving to the side. Our model right here, you can see it curves to the side. How you can remember this? Both scoliosis and sideways begin with an S. Kyphosis. So kyphosis is the forward rounding of the back. You can see in the pictures, his back rounds forward. Same for this one. The spine is rounding forward. An example of the kyphosis. Older people, feeble people, you can see them and they'll be hunched forward. That is kyphosis, the forward rounding of the back. Lordosis. So lordosis is the inward curvature of the lower back. You see lordosis often in pregnant women. The weight of their body is now an uneven distribution. So all of that pressure is put onto their lower back and it makes their spine curve inward. So, in summary, the skeleton is divided into axial and appendicular portions. If you remember, the axial includes the head and the trunk being the ribs, the spine, and the pelvis. Appendicular is everything else. So the girdle, so the shoulders and the arms, and then the legs. Think appendages, appendicular. Within the axial skeleton are the skull, vertebral column, and ribs, which I just discussed. The vertebral column has 5 sections. So we talked about the cervical region. We talked about the thoracic region. Cervical region is the neck. The thoracic region are that part of the spine that touches the ribs. We talked about the lumbar region, which is the lower back. Then we also talked about the sacral and the coccyx, which are, you have 5 fused vertebrae in the sacral, and then you have 4 fused vertebrae in the coccyx. The sections that are not fused together have intervertebral disc for cushioning. So if you can remember these right here in our model, these little dark spots right here are the intervertebral discs. So they provide cushioning for the spine, and it also absorbs shock. You may have heard of someone having a slipped disc. That is when one of these move out of place. Alright guys, so that is our lesson today on the vertebral column. By now you should know the bones of the skull, and we will have a quiz over those tomorrow. You should also know the vertebral column and the sections of the spine. You are now going to go ahead. So you're now going to go ahead and work on the quizzes that is uploaded to Google Classroom. Okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or contact me, and I will see you guys later.